Our mission in the Department of Applied Communication is to foster the co-creation of better social worlds through positive communication. One of the ways we enact our mission is through being mindful of what will best serve and support our students when it comes to selecting course materials. My name is Dr. Kristen McIntyre. I'm a professor in the Department of Applied Communication, and I direct the ACOM 1300 program, which is an introduction to communication. With me today, I have our two full-time ACOM instructors, Ms. Cheryl Johnston and Mrs. Katie Halford. We'll be sharing our experience adopting and transitioning to an OER text in ACOM 1300. First, I'll provide a brief background of our program. Second, Katie Halford will share her experience piloting the text and using it in asynchronous sections. And third, Cheryl Johnston will share her experience using it in face-to-face sections as well as synchronous sections. So let me dive in and give you a bit of a background about ACOM 1300. We are an elective in the core, yay! Usually we're offering about 10 sections a semester in face-to-face synchronous modality or asynchronous modality. Our sections, when there isn't a pandemic, have about 30 students in them. And so our faculty includes 2 full-time instructors, 4 adjunct instructors, and 1 concurrent instructor. Our program does a really great job of focusing on building a foundational communication skills base for students, specifically related to interpersonal communication with a focus on conflict management and public speaking. So we work really hard to make sure they have those skills that are going to serve them well in all of their classes here at UA Little Rock, and of course, in whatever career path they choose. We started our adoption of our OER text in fall of 2019, and that's when we fully adopted it. Before that, we had Katie piloting it a bit and checking in with us to see how it was going. But it was fall 2019 when we fully adopted as a program this new textbook. So now that you understand a bit about our program and what we do there, I'm going to have Katie talk about her experience piloting and transitioning to the OER text.
Particularly in freshman level courses like 1300, students are learning so many things other than just what they're learning in their coursework. They're learning how to do a lot of things on their own for the first time. They're navigating financial aid, and sometimes there's just the normal delays, and sometimes they just don't know to ask questions, or that they need to fill out additional information. Whatever it is, students really struggle to navigate that, and then they also struggle to confess that to their professor. So they continue coming to class, or in an asynchronous section like mine, they continue logging in, but they're not doing their work. And for many of us who are in the asynchronous online world, you know that if students aren't reaching out to us, it's very difficult for us to pull them into the course and get them going. You can reach a hand out, but if they're not reaching it back, there's not a lot you can do. So being able to pilot this in the spring before we fully adopted it was wildly successful. Students loved it, and there were a lot of benefits. The obvious benefit is that students are able to begin participating in the course immediately. So there's no worry about being able to afford it, but also for our online students who are not on campus or even in Central Arkansas, it makes this more accessible to them. So it's not just about affordability, but it's about being able to provide them with access to our textbooks. Particularly the textbook that we were using before, we would run out of copies of that book. So there wouldn't be any at our bookstores. And then students who don't live around our campus were relying on places like Amazon and eBay, Chegg, all of those things. And they would have common issues with unreliable options. So they're paying for an online or an e-text, and then they don't get the text, or their card gets compromised. And even though that's not our fault, we hate for our students to have these experiences. So transitioning to open education resources has been really beneficial for our asynchronous online students. So it's more inclusive, more accessible in terms of students who may have physical or educational related barriers. Having a PDF option makes it a lot easier for them to use a screen reader, to make the text larger if they need to, and also use audio recording software. There are a couple of cons to using our particular OER textbook. One of them that I've noticed is that there is not a lot of diversity represented in the images used. And in some of the examples, they do talk about important topics and social issues. It's just not represented as well in the imagery as in textbooks that we've used prior. So that's been something that's kind of disappointing. But again, we try to use other resources to incorporate in order to counteract that. But also another issue is that this book is particularly long. Many of our students are not prepared to read anywhere from 30 to 40 pages in one chapter. So I try to prepare my students for that and let them know you need to not wait until the very last day that this is due. You need to spread out your reading, break it up into sections so that they're prepared for the length of those chapters. But that's not always really student friendly for freshmen coming in who are just now starting to get used to the amount of reading that they have to do. Overall, we're thrilled to have our OER text. It's been a blessing to our students. It's been clearly indicates that they're able to be more successful in our courses, particularly when they're adding late. For whatever reason, they're able to jump right in and get caught up. So the pros outweigh the cons, at least in my experience with the online asynchronous course. So now that I've shared a little bit about my experience in the online asynchronous world, I'm going to pass it over to Cheryl and let her talk to you a little bit about what it's like to use an open education resource in face-to-face and synchronous courses.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. And as she said, I am the other, or someone said, I'm the other full-time instructor in ACOM and have the privilege to teach ACOM 1300. And as Katie had said before, the majority of our students are freshmen, and particularly in the fall semester when it's their very first time on campus and coming in and all the obstacles and struggles that they're dealing with, moving away from home, being on their own, struggling with making those decisions. Having this open source textbook available for them. I mean, and I present it in a very, very cheerleader-esque way. I'm like, I have great news for you. I am about to give you the best news you're going to hear today. You are not going to have to buy a book for this class. And it is met with literally a round of applause. I am face-to-face. I am, so I'm pumping this up from the very beginning because I see this as a wonderful thing for our students. And I want them to, encourage them to see what, we are providing them, that they're not going to have to come up and with the money for the book because, hearing them face to face, they'll say, oh gosh, yes, this book costs $120 and this book costs $150. And oh, I can't wait to tell my mom, or I can't wait to tell someone that I'm not going to have to buy a book for this class. So it is presented in the very beginning of my classes as a positive, and we work that in. We also provide our students with a survival guide that is on Blackboard at no charge to them, that gives them assignments, tips, tricks, all of these things about APA and being successful in their assignments and so on and so forth. So they have both of these resources free to them. And it is so very important, like Dr. Montague said, in this day and time, that many of our students would not be able to maybe be enrolled in our classes, given the fact that they would have to put out additional money for the textbook. When we did not have the open source textbooks, we did have to rely, on them having to find them in a bookstore. The availability of them from the bookstore, was not always that great, that they would run out of copies, so on and so forth. And then having to find them from elsewhere. And on top of that, waiting for a check in order to buy these, it would put us back literally sometimes 3 weeks before we could start, using the textbook as a resource for our class. And so during that time, I would have to prepare some open sources anyway for them to use in, preparation to get them started for the course. And so we don't have that delay. we're right on top of it. We can jump right in. And I think they see that as a positive. I try so hard to, have them view this as such a positive, being able to use this textbook. Um, I think for retention purposes, we're all about, retaining our students. We get them in as freshmen and we want to keep them. Now, remember, not all of our students are freshmen, but our course is designed mainly for freshmen. So trying to retain our freshmen and get them to be sophomores, juniors, seniors, and graduates, is so important at this level. I know a lot of times that freshman year can make it or break it for many of our students, and any positives that they can see, I think, it just helps that retention level. It helps them if they want, whatever grade they want to make in the class, they have all of the resources available to do that. We have our open source textbook, again, the survival guide I mentioned, and we do have our skill center. I think a lot of you are aware of that. The interns and the GAs are so helpful with our students. So I really feel that we are giving our students, a great opportunity to be successful in this class. We do have our mission of the department, and then I have a class mission or I guess an instructor mission that I always tell them that my goal is for them to be successful. I always tell them that my goal is for you to be successful, and whatever I can do to make you successful, this is the goal I'm trying to reach. And I reiterate that over and over and over. And I think that this open source education is just another way that I can help them, to reach, their success and the success that I want for them. Katie did mention that our book that we're using now is long. It is. I do address that with my students. Each chapter is divided into 4 sections, and it's kind of like, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? That's kind of what I tell them about this. We divide it into sections, and I try to make it just a little bit more manageable for them. And it is long, but it really has some very life applicable situations in them that just today we were, one of the students, I read this in here, and what do you think about this? And we kind of veered off, and that was fun. We had a great class discussion about something in one of the chapters, and I think they relate to it, even though the images, may not be what we want them to be, but a lot of the information is very relatable to our students, and I think that is a con. So all in all, again, with my goal of my students being successful, I think that the open source textbook is a key, can be a great key to their success. So I guess I'm going to hand that back over to Kristen, I think, Dr. McIntyre.
So yes, so hopefully in understanding how we adopted and transitioned into an open source text, you have a better sense now of how we enact our mission through the choices we make to better serve and support our students. And now we're done.
Before we go to Dr. Tate, I have a follow-up question for you. So how did you select the actual OER? You actually use an OER textbook. So what was the process was it a collaborative effort, or was there something about the content? What exactly made you choose that specific title?
So it was a collaborative effort. The faculty that teach 1300 were all invited to review the text, to talk about it. One important thing about our program is that textbooks don't drive our curriculum. We look for textbooks that help support what we want to teach. And so in past, we have a process of, if this is what is important, how do these textbooks align with what those things are? And so we used a similar process for this textbook as well. We needed to make sure that it had the content to support the assignments, and it did. So it was very collaborative. We took time to talk about it. Katie and Cheryl, do you want to add anything to that?
No, just what Dr. McIntyre said, again, it makes us easier in our, sometimes easier in our selection of textbooks, because like she said, we do not drive our course from the textbook. It supports what we want to teach.
So we did have a question, how long did it take us to make the decision? I think Katie piloted that spring, but she was talking with us we meet monthly as a faculty. And so we would check in with like, how's the text working? And so we talked through it for a semester, and then we just basically, I checked in, are we cool with adopting it for fall? And people were like, sure. And so then we did. So I think it helps to have someone pilot it before, if you're looking at a program level.
But
to
even
kind of
just from the moment that you say, okay, we need to find an OER textbook to figuring out which one it's going to be, how long does it take?
took us a semester.
Okay.
Because April said, she's like, here's this possible text. And we're like, great. So then we're looking through it. And I think we maybe looked at a couple others who didn't have as much as this one did. But really, it wasn't, because we were very clear about what we needed, it made it very easy to decide if a text had what we needed it to do. But we're fortunate, right, is that we have a common syllabus. So it's very easy to be like, will this work or will it not? We don't have to negotiate that kind of stuff like other programs. Where do we find possible texts? Yeah, that's a good question for the whole group, because you find them for us, April. But they also show up in listservs. That's where I found my persuasive presentation text came up in a listserv that I'm on. I also use open source for that class, but we're not talking about that here.
University of Minnesota Libraries has a pretty impressive list. Their site is easy to navigate. So if you're just looking to see what's out there, the easiest thing, of course, is to just Google open education resources, but UMN has been easy to navigate. Our book is accessible through other sites, but this site is just easier to navigate. So that's a good place to start and just dip your toe in and see what they have.
Okay, so let's go ahead and Dr. Tate, can you go ahead? Do you want to share your screen, or are you gonna be low tech for us today as well?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna follow in the footsteps of my colleagues there and not worry about a bunch of PowerPoints and stuff. I have a couple. Maybe I'll bring them up if some questions come up that are relating to it. But I think I'm just gonna chat a little bit. Is that okay?
Perfect. Whatever you want to do.
All right, perfect. Okay, well, my name is Daryl Tate, and I am the program coordinator for the Learning Systems Technology Education program here at UA Little Rock. I work with STAR and e-learning all the time on all types of projects that we have. In fact, I was able to obtain a couple of OER mini grants, which were really great, that helped out. I believe it was in 2017, 2018, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was around those times. Our program now, 4 of our 8 LSTE courses use only OERs. I would like to make the entire program OER friendly, but that's going to take a little bit of time. But a little bit about me is I began as a student and a course developer, instructional designer, and now I'm training faculty in how to use OERs and e-learning and all this whole distance learning stuff that's really emerging now. And so in each of these spaces, I've been the beneficiary and a proponent of their use because I've seen it in action and I've seen it work. And what was mentioned before was the benefits, to students in terms of saving money from very, very expensive textbooks and maybe supplementing learning resources. But I opted in our program for those reasons and more. One was our program as instructional technology as a discipline is very quickly emerging. It's always changing. There's always something new that you have to figure out and know or to convey to students. And I found that OERs were a better way to create that more current immersive experience for the students by me finding things that are actually out there on my own. And then it didn't hurt that my background is in instructional design. So I was able to create some assets, use whatever type of e-learning tools to do so, and find whatever type of articles that already exist. And so it was for those reasons why I ended up really moving into the OER direction. And so I'll see if I can put on a couple hats here and talk a little bit. Let me start my little timer. I should have started it because I can really start going and have to watch myself. All right, so one, I chose OERs because I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us as educators to reimagine our learning spaces. It sort of makes us think about, what we really want in terms of delivering content. And so I kind of evolved from being this person who was trying to attempt to change a digital textbook to someone who really just began thinking more about, how could I deliver content differently in general to students, and how could I be more flexible and more equitable and more collaborative, and how can I personalize the learning environment? And so I was able to kind of evolve from this space of economy and uh, space of supplement to rethinking really my pedagogy and how I really taught. And so I think it gives us that opportunity. Uh, the second point is I moved to it because OERs provide flexibility in instructional alignment, which is everything in instructional design, especially in our discipline. Everything revolves around alignment. And so it allowed me to really become more of a thought leader and not be restricted by prescribed content. And so, a lot of times I find, that uh, content is content driven and not student driven, or content is driven by, and I think I heard it mentioned earlier, is driven by what you have available. And so now you find yourself sometimes looking at your learning objectives and tweaking them toward what the content that you have to achieve alignment, as opposed to actually having the resources there to create and be untied, your hands untied to being able to create content. Now, backward design is great in some cases, but I just didn't want to be handcuffed with backward design all the time and be that person who has a solution that's in search of a problem, so to speak. And so I think that open educational resources untie our hands and let us be more innovative in our practices, specifically with skills you want students to apply and learn. If you have specific standards that you need to apply for an outcome or an objective in a course. And, a big thing is it allows us to create ways that challenge students in their understanding, and they give us feedback in ways that are more lined up with their particular strengths or their particular preferences. And so I thought that was very important as well. Here's one that I talk about all the time with faculty and the use of OERs, and that they broaden our exposure to these expert teacher domains. And so, kind of building off the work of Schulman, where he tells us, his research supports that expert teachers have content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, interdisciplinary knowledge, and technological knowledge. But there's another domain that puts them all together called TPAC, technological pedagogical content knowledge, where now we're thinking about technology in ways that affects our pedagogy and not just as a discipline or professional development. And so when we use open educational resources, it causes us to engage with digital artifacts and then think in ways that increase this domain of knowledge, whether we even know it's happening or not. We're actually increasing the way we think about how we use technology in our pedagogy. And so I think that's important, especially if you don't have necessarily requisite skills in building certain learning assets and content. You can at least begin to engage in those things that are already there, and it just kind of cause an effect where you're operating kind of where this confluence of technology, pedagogy, and content are interacting. You're just thinking about that, and that increases your capacity as an educator. And so finally, my favorite, and I'll get to it. Okay, good. I have like 4 minutes. My favorite is OERs are more universal, designed for learning friendly. And UDL is everything, to me, as an instructional designer or a faculty member in it, and personally, and I'll get to that in a second. So if you're familiar with UDL, you'll hear me say it one more time. If you're not, you'll hear it for the first time. Universal design means representing content in multiple ways of assessing students and ways of engaging students. And so, you don't just have one way of presenting content. And that research supports that if someone is, for example, reading the transcript while they're watching the video, they're actually, there's more learning taking place. Or when you're attaching content to two ways that a student can get to it, you know, they're gaining knowledge in ways that they don't even realize it's happening to them. The other thing is, one of the biggest payoffs of UDL in this OER environment is that it allows us to make our pedagogy more responsive to a particular audience, right? And so now, you hear a lot of talk these days about culturally responsive pedagogy and equity-minded teaching. And OERs, and I heard it earlier, I heard Katie say earlier, she was disappointed about how that particular textbook they hadn't evolved yet, but hopefully they will. And you were able to supplement it with these equity-minded type of representation of content. And so it helps us to shape the instructional environment with these learning assets that are central in to the development of those who our audience are, who our students are. And so I love that, being able to do that. And let's see. Obviously, the accessibility with students with disabilities. You can most of the time, the assets that you obtain from OERs, they'll already have the transcripts. They'll have the video. They'll have an MP3 for you to be able to listen. And so now you've addressed those students with those disabilities or those challenges, and you've kind of leveled the playing field for them. And so I'm just excited. I'm getting to a close here now. I'm just excited to be here and talk to you about it, and answer any questions that you may have, and to just be a champion of how we can just continue to transition from a passive experience to these active and creative learning environments that contribute to our practice. And so thanks for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I think you bring, I'm hearing a pattern here about the diversity, and I think that's something that OER does bring to the table. And just in my learning about OER resources, I've learned that just because you go to OER, there's still a lack of diversity in OER content. But I think I'm going to promote Hannah Hurdle's mini professional development here. One of the things that she is going to focus on in that series is how to seek out diverse content in some of the library resources that we have. So I was surprised. I thought like we had this golden egg that once we go OER, we're going to be more inclusive, we're going to have more diverse content. But those challenges and those obstacles in publishing still exist even in the OER world. So that's when you have to go out and actually seek the supplementary, or actually be intentional about the types of resources you bring into your classes. So thank you, Dr. Tate. Now we're going to turn it over to Dr. Belford, who's been a champion for LibreText, and I've enjoyed some of our conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks. So I'll just hand it over to you, and you can share what you would like to share for the group.
Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
And it says query LibreText?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to share a screen, and I'll try and do this in 10 minutes as fast as I can. I've been involved with LibreText since around 2011. I was involved with the Wiki Hyperglossary of the National Science Digital Library in 2007. I was on the NSF IUSE STEM Wiki grant in 2015 and in the 2018 LibreText grant. LibreText covers 12 different disciplines. You can remix stuff. We could run a workshop at a later date, and I'm not going to attempt to go over that. I'm going to focus on what I do in chemistry. But if you look at the chemistry portal, and we could go to the campus bookshelves, you'll see that there are campuses all over the country that use it. And if I scroll down here to UALR, if I can get my mouse to work, let's see, I gone too far. Here we are. We've got about 6 or 7 classes in the chemistry department that use it. We also run our labs with it. Before I dive into one of these classes, I want to give a quick paradigm of one of the things that I've been doing in our labs. And this is my most cutting edge stuff, I think. And we run these Raspberry Pi $40 microcomputers where we take chemical sensor data, send it up to students in real time. They can work in Google Classroom, Google Sheets in the clouds. All this stuff is in the LibreText, and then they submit reports in Google workbooks using Google Sheets and stuff. And I have all that stuff on LibreText. If you go to the analytics of my site, in February of this year, I had 121,000 hits. So it's somewhat recognized. Now, I'm going to go over my prep chem course, which is it's a remediation course. And this is a schema showing the basic diagrams. The things in purple are the actual learning modules. You could call that the classical textbook if you want. The things in green here are the Google Classroom activities that my students do. They collaboratively work on documents and stuff. And they have access to those in the learning modules before class. And then in the class, because of COVID, we're using Zoom breakout rooms and Google Classroom. And then afterwards, every one of my assignments has a test yourself section. And with this, I have a bunch of H5P animated stuff. And I was asked to demo some of the H5P stuff. And I'll show that in a second. Then I also have a homework structure system with elaborate feedback. The H5P stuff is more drill and practice. And then we have an adapt homework system where the students submit their assignments by midnight of the day after each of my lecture to keep them engaged. And these then go into a grading portal and they're graded. And it's possible to integrate this into Blackboard. Of course, I'm not involved with any of that stuff. If I come over here, this is one of my chapters, the chapter we did yesterday. This is a chapter on nomenclature. These are the different sections. You can print any LibreText book. If you print the book, it will take any video, automatically put a QR code on it so that the students could scan it with their cell phones. This is all automated into the LibreText. I'm going to jump down to the test yourself activities at the bottom. So these are H5P activities. This is a drag and drop. There's actually 10 different question sets here, and they randomize every time. And these were actually, some of these were developed, many developed by students. I was asked to focus to go over H5P. One of the things, the beauties of LibreText is it's like a wiki and it's a library of educational material. Much of this stuff is in foreign languages, okay? Obviously, tequila is not chemistry. You know, unete uno, numeros uno 60. I think that's Spanish. Let's go over some of the ones. This is a type of H5P activity here. This is a hotspot one where you could click on hotspots. Here's another one where you're trying to figure out the electron configurations of atoms, and if you can, every time you get one right. Here's a sort of a neat one. This is representing an isomer where you, and these are all can be generated with this free open source software. And we have the server within that hyperlibrary. And if somebody else creates something, you can do it. And this is an interesting one. Here is one of my videos where I have a stop line, hydronium, and therefore the pH is less than 7. And you can have them answer a question, and we're setting this up now where the question can go into a graded data bank. And you can also, I guess, if, let's just say I click this, ammonium is acetic, and it will react with the water. And guess what? I don't have it right because there's actually two answers here. Ammonia is also a conjugate acid. And so you can have more than one correct answer in these. Go back. I don't know what happened here, but you can also, well, I'm going to skip on to the next one because you can have timed things like put these in order. Now I need to look at a periodic table to do this correctly. But I'm just going to go here. So I did that in 3 seconds, check my work. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one, but you can have timed activities. Here you have drag and drops, and you have two different schemas for looking at things. So bromine could be a representative element, bromine could be a non-metal. And so this is a way of doing these types of activities. And incidentally, with H5P, this gives you a bearing of them. And I have slides. We have over 33 types that we can run. And there's also material on the accessibility of it and stuff through the H5P site. And I thought I made a link to H5P. If you're not familiar with them, check them out, h5p.org. But we do have an H5P server. Now, going back to my schema here, if my students do their homework, okay, this up here is the adapt homework system. And so like right now they're doing 4.5B, that is due, I think midnight today. And so we have several ways of doing these. Okay, so this one here is a question where the students use a WYSIWYG to enter their stuff, but we also have the ability to cut and paste PDFs where you can take a PDF of 7 pages and put different pages into different questions as answers. We have tutorials on how to do all of that stuff. And if I go into the grading portal, let me just jump over to here. This is in the grading portal. And so, for example, this student wrote copper hypochlorite, but they forgot to put the 2 because copper has multiple oxidation states. So you can give them the answer, you can give them the grade, you can choose which question, you can search any student by their name. And you can sort by graded, ungraded, however you like. Now, also, how am I doing for time? I got 2 minutes. As you might guess, I'm a lab person. We can actually stream data into spreadsheets within the LibreText that are housed in real time. So this was where data was being spread from one of these Raspberry Pis. The students would see the data coming in. We've been working a lot with Google Sheets. Here the students were designing lab reports. This is a lab that's going on at this very moment, actually, at this very moment. A TA is teaching this lab. And why is my machine freezing on me? Hold on a second. I tend to run too many things from my computer. Okay, I'm inside of, oh, I see what's going on. I went to print this, excuse me, cancel. Okay, this is a lab report where we, like the students get to see how long it takes for a solution to turn blue, and then they stick their data into some other data, and there's Google Sheets, and then they have, we have a form hooked up to our Google, their lab reports so that they put their particular Google Sheet into the form, and then the TA gets one and it automatically grades it for the TA. I hear the bell. The most important thing, and I'll shut up after this, is hypothesis annotation systems. I discuss all of my papers with my students over groups within Hypothesis, and I can demo that later.
Thank you, Dr. Belford. That was an interesting session. I think that LibreText, I've had some opportunity to look at it over the last couple of weeks. You introduced it to me. I guess that was probably my first year I was at UA Little Rock, and I was intrigued by it. And I'm actually going to look at it again and see how we can use H5P actually in the library and in our instruction classes, because the fact that it's all integrated, that's what I like most, because we've looked at H5P before, but because we didn't have a server to post it on, we could not get that assessment part of it. We could actually run them, but we could not gather the assessment. So I'm excited about that. And I would love for you to have the opportunity to share a more detailed overview, and we can actually upload that. The library has a a organization on Blackboard that we can actually host more content. So we would love to have an opportunity for you to share more information about it. And in fact, all of the presentations that you hear today will be uploaded to that Blackboard shell. And I will send an email out to all the participants after the session. And again, I think, Sharonda, we're going to have an open lab afterwards if people want to stay around and meet with us about how to find OER content or how to integrate it, or if we just want to talk about our experiences a little bit more. I know Dr. Belford said he could stay around and talk about hypothesis a little bit more if you guys wanted to stick around. We have an assessment for the class. I am not a co-host, so I think one of you guys are going to have to show the poll.
There's not a poll. We're going to send a survey at the end. I mean,
okay, all right, okay.
Survey later today because we needed to revise a couple of things on there for you.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, I think I'm going to hand it over to JB, and he's going to say some final thoughts, and then we'll do some housekeeping at the end to make sure everyone gets their ATLE points, because that's important. I am 38 points away from my next level, so that's important. So JB, if you could go ahead and wrap us up, and then we'll open up for and go from there.
Okay, and Louise and Sharonda, I'd like to thank you for putting this panel together. As always, the panel was very informative. Dr. Belford, Dr. Halford, Dr. Johnston, Dr. McIntyre, and Dr. Tate, all of you were very interesting speakers. Came at OER from used it a different way and different disciplines, and I think that's what the beauty of our sessions when we've done the sessions, the library and e-learning star, we've tried to work together in the past few years to try to promote OER and to spread the word. So we appreciate these faculty members being kind of leaders on campus and speaking out and talking about their experiences. One thing, as Louise said, we will have an open lab later if you want to talk, and if attendees want to talk to the presenters a little bit more, that would be helpful. Other thing I'd like to say is obviously the library and STAR are very interested in being able to support any way we can the use of OER, open access, and library content. Used to be, and we still do, we still host print materials on reserve. We stopped that during COVID, but we'll pick that back up. Unfortunately, many of the ebook versions of textbooks are unavailable to libraries to do that because they will not make that available. However, we do find that there are some not the big textbook producers, but some of the publishers will allow us to purchase ebooks and make those available for classes. So if you have things ideas, talk to us. We can see if we can arrange an electronic version of a document for you. It may not be maybe an article, a paper, a book that you want to add to your course, that we can make it available through our system as well. Help you actually be able to purchase it. So the library, we have librarians, Louise and Hannah, they'll be happy to help you identify content and help, particularly within library content, but also OER. And then the STAR, Sharonda and all the folks at STAR, they will be happy to help you integrate your content into the Blackboard environment. And I think that's a good partnership, and we appreciate that. I should mention, I think Sharonda did show earlier that we have some more sessions coming up this week for Open Education Week. Oh, you got it. Okay, so it's out there, and I sent you a link as well. One of the first things on it is a link to a survey, and I know, oh my God, another survey. Everybody hates or loves surveys, whichever the case may be. But I'll put that in the chat too. But it is important. We are soliciting input on faculty members' perceptions and use of OER. As much content as we can get from faculty, the better we are to be able to support. We're also trying to identify kind of a benchmark where we are on campus. I think there's a lot more OER. What we found is there's a lot more OER things happening on campus, but people don't know about them. And in the campus doesn't even know about it. Until recently, we didn't even know the campus. I know Bruce sent out an email just to identify what books are being provided at the bookstore and which classes were not using commercial textbooks. So we're even just trying to get a handle on that. So that said, if you take time, the survey is fairly painless. Louise, do they get anything if they complete the survey? Do we got a prize if someone can register for?
you could make a prize. Yes.
Maybe we should give him David Montague's book. Maybe that would be a prize.
Do a gift card or gift card.
We could do that. I don't know if that's okay or not. But anyway, we do appreciate if you would take a little bit of time to do the survey. That gives us important feedback, and we will share the contents of the results of the survey at the end of the collection period. I think it's through March 15th. Is that right, Louise?
March 16th.
March 16th. Okay. All right. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Louise. And like I said, thanks to all the presenters who did a great job as always. Many of you presented for us in the past, and they're always very informative and engaging conversations.
I have not been looking at the chat, so I think we may need to answer any questions that are there or open up the floor for questions. And Sharonda, have you been monitoring the chat? Do we have any questions we need to address?
Well, I actually had a question. Can I ask my question? This is actually for the first group. It was one of the things that depending on the Creative Commons license, how much ability you have to manipulate and change that OER content. And
that I can't stop talking. And by the way, for the record, sorry I had to join in late. I was talking to a student during office hours, so I will watch the recording to catch up with everything I've missed. But I'm like Tate and everybody else, I cannot wait to be able to offer all my course content as OERs. My issue has always been the lack of content that I need for my classes. So what for the vast majority of courses that I teach, because I teach mostly 20th and 21st century literature, and in particular, literature written by minorities, there's not enough OER content out there for me to use. So what I normally end up doing is assigning novels, plays, and what have you, which students can buy either as ebooks or used books and so forth. And then obviously, if there are articles that I can use that I can find from the library or any website, that, anything I can find for free, I always opt for. The problem is, especially when it comes to the core class that we have in one of the core classes in the English department, or literature, where when you find something that is available at the college level, because most of it is K through 12, it is super canonical. And what I mean by that, for those of you who are not familiar with canonical literature, is that it's super traditional literature, which I am not an expert or even fond of teaching. I try to teach diverse voices, and there's very little of that available. That's why I always have to end up opting for, my little textbook, which I had somewhere and I was going to show you. It's actually $20. But even assigning a textbook that is $20 makes me feel guilty. Students still have to pay money for the book, right? It's not as bad as what I've heard of some other disciplines, having textbooks that are $200 or $300. But still, it's money that the students have to spend in addition to all their other expenses. So that's my main challenge. That's why I was asking, okay, I know that there are disciplines where there's a plethora of resources, of OER resources, but there are others where it's a lot harder to find something and you have to piece things together. And even when you do so, you still need something where students have to pay money. Can anybody help me? Because I do not have time to create my own OER, even though I will attend the session that talks about, how to do that. But, yeah.
I mean, I will say that, the library can purchase certain things. Fiction sometimes is a little tougher because the same thing they don't, but there are possibilities sometimes that we can purchase a license that would get unlimited users. Typically we purchase ebooks for one user, then we can bump up to 2 or 3. Sometimes you can buy them for unlimited users. So then you can then you don't have the problem with people fighting over the textbook. So I would say when you give us a list, we can always check and see. We might be able to pick up a few of them, and then we can make those available as long as they're okay. Students are okay with an electronic version of the text. We could at least look into that. So feel free to check with us.
I mean, there are a number of books that I teach on a regular basis because, you know, it's like you have to. There's no way around it. So yeah, I will definitely contact you about that. And I think that the students appreciate the fact that if there is a free option, even if I have to say they're still old school like me, and they like, you know, hard copies, you know, something they can write on and so forth, which now ebooks have advanced a lot, and you can actually annotate in many cases. But yeah, having that ebook option that several students can check out at the same time, that will be amazing. So I'll be bugging you about that. Thank you.
Good.
And another plug for Hannah's mini professional development series. She's going to also show faculty how to actually gather library content within Blackboard. So we work with STAR to integrate a search for the library in your Blackboard shell. And so you can search library resources and actually pull that information in, and you don't have to worry about the copyright and the links and things like that. It'll automatically come in. And so obviously, if you can't sign up for the professional development mini series, you can reach out to the library and we can walk you through those. And I see Dr. Montague with his hand up, so I'm gonna give it to him now.
I just wanted to ask a question. I want to be I love all this discussion, but I want to ask, to keep it, I would say it's already real, but just to add the elephant in the room, how should we address faculty who assert that OER is not quality content for classes?
I can try to address that. Okay, so I would ask them to operationalize what they mean by quality content, because the proof is in the alignment. It is in the learning objective / assignment / assessment. And if the assignments are mapping on and aligning with the learning objectives and you're assessing them correctly, that is quality content. Now, if they're talking about slick looking stuff and, I mean that's something totally different. But I think that the proof is in the alignment.
Thank you.
I think that goes back to something that Dr. McIntyre said so well, and I'm going to let her say it again. It was how she said something about they don't let the textbook drive their learning. However you said it was beautiful. And so I tried to write it down, but I didn't get it all down. But if you could say that again, I think that's the key, in terms of, and also the other thing is, it's not an all or nothing approach. You can phase in things. I think, Lori, I think you were wanting to do everything 100% OER. Well, it seems like you're still making a lot of good progress, So in some cases, it's unrealistic. It can't be, but that's okay as long as you're making the effort. You're moving the needle.
I'll take that back to our course design discussion that we have all the time, Laura. It's a continuous process of improvement. You're never going to have the perfect online course, and so each semester you're taking over. How can I replace this content with OER? I'll just focus on this module this time. So try to chunk it. We talk about chunking the course. Try to chunk how you add that content into your course too, and don't think of it as, because we know when we design a course from the onset, it's like overwhelming. I've got to do all this, but once you get it there, you can add pieces, and so just think about it that way. We don't have to do it all up front, but if you can do a little bit at a time, you'll get there. Yeah. It's still a lot though. Any other questions? Well, again, I'll plug what we have for this week. Again, we're asking you to complete the faculty open education survey, but separate and apart from that, you will get a survey regarding this session. And so be sure to distinguish the two. And we ask that you please complete the two. Again, tomorrow is the kickoff of the Open Education Student Success mini series, and that will go for the remainder of the session, for the semester, excuse me. So you'll get the first sneak peek tomorrow, and then next Wednesday you'll get another peek. So be sure to enroll in that. The instructions are on our website and on the library's websites as well. Then again, Thursday we have our Creating OER 10 Tools You Should Know About. You don't want to miss that. Markia's going to share some tools that'll be helpful in creating OER. And then again, I'm not sure how many slots are still available for the OE Arkansas online conference that's hosted by the Arkansas Department of Education and the U of A. And so it's open to all Arkansas universities. So you can, I think it's from 10 to 12:40. So it's a short set mini conference. So you can be sure to register for that if you have the time for that on Friday. But with that, I know we have, Louise, did you want to do our waterfall questions? Or we're open for open lab. So this is just open discussion now. Any questions we can answer or anything you want to take a look at. This is just open lab, kind of hands-on. Ask questions. We can dive into a course or whatever it is you want to do. So this is just open lab. Louise, did you want to?
No, we're okay. I think that I wanted to give Dr. Belford, if he's still here, if I wanted to give more time to talk about hypothesis and maybe just talk about the different areas in LibreText, because I feel like he wanted more time and I want to give him that time if there are those who are going to stay for the open lab. Also, I want to let everybody know this is not a one-time shot for us. We're going to be here for you. And so if you need us, if you can't stay now, that's okay. You know, you can make an appointment with us and we can walk with you and we're going to meet you wherever you are on your journey. So we just want to make sure that you are aware of that.